of course, you can feel changes yourself, but I think there is value when you don't see it in yourself. We show you that you're actually improving, because it's sometimes very difficult to believe that I'm actually getting better. So you need someone to tell you that, hey, even though you don't see the gains, it's there.
You're coming.
Yes.
Hey, thank you for tuning in. And do you know that we all are eager to develop soft skills? Now, do you know what soft skills are in this AI era, in this fast-paced world? Do you know what soft skills are? And do you know which essential soft skills should you have? Which communication is it when it comes to communication, effective communication? Do you know anything about critical thinking? Do you know anything about interpersonal relationships? How you communicate with the people, your loved ones? In today's episode, I have Sreyan Kanungo, who is working at LOZO, who is a product manager, who is a product developer at LOZO in Shanghai. And he shares with us how he has gone throughout his journey of debate and public speaking, how he has competed against, people from Princeton, from Harvard, from UK in Oxford and all that, and how his 12 years of public speaking and debating is eventually directed towards helping a new generation of public speakers, a new generation of effective communication leaders. If you're new to the podcast, remember that the SelfSeed Podcast is an educational podcast aimed at helping you become better, helping you understand the better means, the better ways of communicating better, going through your entrepreneurship journey. So if you tuned in, you're on the right spot. Don't forget to click that subscribe button. If you're listening on any podcasting platform, there's that like follow or subscribe or add to my favorites. Yeah, just that button here. You can press it. And yeah, don't forget to comment below. Just if you're listening on Spotify, there's like a comment section. Just write me what you think about this episode. If you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to let me know as well what you think about this episode and the SelfSeed Podcast in general. I hope we can get to learn from the amazing young voices all over the world making an impact. This is Emmanuel from SelfSeed Podcast. Let's get into it. All right, welcome back to the podcast. Welcome back to today's episode where we are talking about soft skills. And I don't know if you know what's the meaning of soft skills, but we are talking about soft skills in this AI era. And I already have Sreyan Kanungo. Did I pronounce that right?
Yeah, perfect.
All right. We have Sreyan Kanungo from Shanghai, and who is doing an amazing job as a product manager in a place. And so he's going to take the wheel from here. He's going to introduce himself. He's going to tell us a little bit more about him and what he does, and then we can get rolling. Welcome, man. Welcome to the podcast. Thank you for accepting to be here today.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me, man. I love the podcast. Happy to be here.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So, you can, maybe we can start by knowing you a little bit about you, or more about you, if not a little bit. Yeah, what you do, tell us the cool stuffs and tell us the boring stuffs as well. And right. Yeah, hopefully the listener gets interested to listen to our conversation today, man.
Yeah, I'll try to keep the boring stuff to a minimum, which I think is very hard. So I was born and raised in Dhaka, Bangladesh, but I did my undergraduate degree in the US. I think the most apt and brief way to describe myself is that I've just been a competitive debater all my life. So I started debating in 7th grade, kept on debating till last year when I graduated from school. Yeah, so it's been debating for 12 years. So I debated for the Bangladesh national team, then got a full scholarship to debate on behalf of my university in the US. I eventually majored in agile startup management, which is a liberal arts way of just saying product management. Because liberal arts schools always make things sound incredibly fancy.
Yeah.
And right now I'm a product manager at LOZO. And LOZO is basically an organization that coaches debate and public speaking, but also partners with schools to run debate and public speaking events and organizations. Right. So my job here is to oversee their digital transformation, which in simple words just means I'm trying to build an online platform with LOZO that makes everything that we do in person more accessible, more gamified to an online audience. Because we want essentially for all children, whether they live in Shanghai or whether they go to an international school or bilingual school, we want everyone, regardless of their cost barriers, their geographical barriers, to be able to access good communication coaching. And we also want to be able to assess and track it to the best of our abilities. So it's about teaching, gamifying, and tracking communication skills of K through 12 kids. So yeah, it's fun to be able to build something that has shaped my life for the better part of 12 years. So I'm happy to be here. And Shanghai is such a fun place. Never been here. Been here 6 months now, and I don't think I want to leave anytime soon. So yeah, it's a great place.
I know these places in China, they can just take a good toll out of you, and then you just like, no, we're not leaving. We're trying to build a good life here. Yeah. And I actually think you kept the boring part to the minimum, which I think they went. So it's really cool what you're doing, And 12 years of debate. Let me recall. The last time I debated, was it in secondary school? Maybe that was like how many years ago? Maybe 6, 7, 8 now? No, more than that. Maybe almost 10 years ago. That's the last time I debated, and I never met someone who has gone consistently with a debate passion and carried it even to his, how you call it, agile product manager, right? Yeah. I can still reshape that thing in you. So I'm curious to know, man, what really motivated you to like stay down the track of public speaking or debating and all this? Because I mean, you must be good at arguing.
Oh man, my teammates and my opponents would say I'm very bad at it, but no, I think so. In 7th grade, I couldn't speak English, so I spoke little to no English, and my mom was an English teacher, and my dad studied in the US, so they were incredibly unhappy with the fact that their son spoke no English and was also just a very bad student. So
I can feel that pain.
Yeah, exactly. So they were like, they tried to give me like English tutors and all that stuff, but I obviously wasn't that smart. So they were like, let's put him in an activity with his friends. And a bunch of my friends were debating in high school, or they just joined, because in 7th grade we had a debate team. And that's why I joined. My mom and dad just wanted me to learn English. But the reason why I stayed was, I think I realized 2 things. One is not being able to communicate is actually quite painful. And it's the subtle sort of pain that you don't understand. It's everything from personal stuff where you can't talk about your emotions to more professionally frustrating stuff where you can't communicate your potential.
Right.
So even though, let's say, I was going to competitions, winning awards eventually, it was still like not enough. I still felt that pain, that there was something that I wanted to say sometimes that I couldn't express. So it was just this journey of trying to be able to express myself as well as I could. And that, I guess, took me 12 years to finally call it like, okay, you know what? I think I'm done. And it's eye-opening, because you talk about so many things. You talk about the economy, you talk about social issues, you talk about philosophy, and it's like never boring. I think my best memories are traveling to a competition in Croatia with my friends, and we were a part of the national team, and we were meeting people from like Zimbabwe, we were meeting people from England, and we were all together just talking about stuff. And I was like, I never want this to stop, like a student like me who barely could get C's to pass a class was here with the smartest kids, talking to them and sometimes winning against them. That was such a crazy idea. So I think it's a mixture of all of these things. It's a mixture of wanting to communicate, and
Yeah.
all the fun things that happen when you are in the midst of it.
That's pretty cool, and I cannot imagine the satisfaction, the point, that feeling of is it enlightenment, or the feeling of just the feeling of contentment that you get after coming across these great minds in one room, and like you win even against them. And I'm very happy for you, man, because you have kept you saw a shortcoming and you turned it into a powerful tool, or into a strength. So that's nice, because in today's world, we see there are many people still struggling to speak out, and some of them, maybe they choose to use, let's say, social media and all that to try and send out the message that they cannot speak. Or there's that also aspect where people on social media are different from how they are in the world. Like, people can write these long threads, but when you meet them in real life, like nothing. So it's good that you kept on that. And I just wanted to also inquire, like, what have been the challenges, like, of this journey of going towards the objective, towards the goal of becoming maybe the greatest public speaker or greatest debater? What have been some of the challenges?
Yeah, like, I'm definitely far from the greatest, but I think the satisfaction is that to go from not being able to speak English to ranking as one of the top speakers in the world, like, I mean, not the greatest, but top 10. I'm like, what? Like, my mother still thinks I'm lying. Like, even when I show her the certificate, she's like, nah, you're not. But I think the biggest challenge would be, I think there are largely two. So the one is more of a logistical challenge, which is the way in which we are raised is that studying is everything. You have subjects, you go to school, you get A's. And I think the peer pressure from society to just be that is that you go to school, you do well, then you study for exams, then you study for university entrance exams, you try to get into the best public school or public university in your locale. So I think that was a problem, because whenever I used to go to debate, people used to tell my mom, your son should be studying, your son should go to this math camp, or your son should go to this history camp so that he gets an A, so that he goes to this university. And then even though I think I give all the credit to my success to my mother, there were times where my mom was like, you know what, no, you can't go do debate, this weekend you must stay and study. So that was a big problem, because I think a lot of people don't understand the value of learning these skills very early on in your life, especially a lot of parents, because the way in which society is structured, we just say that if you get good grades, everything just suddenly happens for you. I think that's the mainstream understanding. So just getting access to debating sometimes was quite difficult.
Yeah.
The second issue, I think, the second biggest challenge was, especially when you don't speak English as a first language, and you're coming from a developing country, and you go to a very small university. When you're debating against people from Yale and Harvard and Princeton, especially, like, let's say they're Americans or they're English people, there is a bias that plays to it. Now, it definitely makes beating them quite satisfying, and I think there was times where I was like, the only thing that got me through is that I need to beat that Princeton team, or I need to beat that Yale team. But it was still quite difficult, because there's an automatic credibility associated with, if you're a British person at Princeton saying something, versus if you're a Bengali person from HWS, because who even knows what Bangladesh is, and who even knows what HWS is, right? So I think that was a challenge, and you had to not only out debate people, but you have to out debate people by 10 points, 15 points in order to sometimes get the win. And I think that was quite frustrating. But yeah, I mean, I think, but I try not to think too much about it, because every sport has something like that associated to it. And I think for debate, it's, especially if you're debating from developing countries, that's basically the price you have to pay.
Yeah, it's really nice the way you put it, that when you're coming from an unprivileged background, you get to to meet those people who are, let's say, at the top, right?
Right.
We wouldn't say maybe privileged, but at the top, and you
Right.
get to win them. I think that the amount of joy you get is sometimes is unexplainable, and I think you did a good job in your and so far you're still doing it. And yeah, maybe we can just get to talk about soft skills. Someone wondering or someone who opened this episode, perhaps they're wondering what are soft skills, and yeah, maybe we can get to start by enlightening what are soft skills, and do you have like some examples of soft skills, and then we can go on down this.
Of course, yeah. So I think to me, soft skills exist on a spectrum. So I would say that these are anything that you can't essentially buy your way into, right? So or you can't. So I know that there is a lot of courses for stuff online, but soft skills are essentially stuff like how do you make people feel when they talk to you, or how are you breaking down a complex idea into something that is enjoyable to talk about? So it's not just communication. It goes deeper than just being able to talk good English. It's about how you make people feel when they're working with you. So and that opens it up to a lot of things. So okay, so communication we kept on talking about, but there's also like critical thinking, right? Which is your ability to see something and being able to analyze parts of it in a very succinct and clear way. And then there's also like just interpersonal relationship management, which is just when you see your coworker, when you see, let's say, a partner company, or where you just a cross-functional team or anything, can you maintain a relationship with them such that they want to work with you or they feel comfortable working with you? And the list goes on, but I would say those three parts, communication, critical thinking, interpersonal relationship management, I think make up most of the soft skill tree, if you can put it like that. And I think that's the most easiest way to define it.
Yeah, the way that we can interact with our environment, the way that we can interact with the people around us, the interpersonal relationship, the way that we see things, and the way that we analyze these things, and being able to respond to even situations. Yeah, that's all about soft skills. And I love how you started by saying sometimes these are things that you cannot buy your way into.
Right.
It's things that we have to. So it means there are things that we have to commit and gradually learn along the way, and not necessarily that we should learn in a formal setting, right? Because I don't think. Let me try to remember. All my years of education, I don't remember them teaching me how to communicate and all that. I actually learned how to communicate by individually learning through books, learning through peers, people who are already doing it, right? And so it shows that this is one of the branches of learning or continuous education, where we don't really necessarily have to go the straight path, but rather we can branch and get it out. And I think you mentioned the three important ones: the communication, which is the usual one, how we talk with others, the interpersonal relationships, and the critical thinking. And so I wanted to pick your mind on how does someone improve their communication skills, simply put, because maybe I have just mentioned some of how I have been able to grow gradually, but you personally, from your experience, how have you been able to raise? Because you said earlier on, I caught your words where you say your teachers, or sometimes your mom tells you, you don't need to go to this debate this weekend. And so the society doesn't give us the privilege of everybody choosing to become a debater, everybody choosing to go to an English club.
Right.
So how does someone then individually, or how did you personally, were you able to improve your skills?
Yeah, and I think I'm privileged in that case where my mom and dad saw the value of it and pushed me into it. But I do think this is a very important discussion when society or even your close ones, they don't want you to pursue this. Like, how do you do it? I think I think that's a very good question. So I think there are a couple of ways to think about it. First is you have to figure out why you exactly want to communicate. And I know this sounds very basic, but the reason why it's important is because different people's ideal version of communication is different. So for me, it was always, for the longest time, it was literally just, I wanted to beat XYZ countries or XYZ schools. It was like very, very childish, but it was still good because it kept me going. And it slowly evolved into that. When I was looking at my professional life, I knew that I wanted to, I was picking between management consultant or technical product stuff. I eventually picked technical product management, and I knew that good product managers know how to communicate in cross-functional environments. So you need to communicate with your investor, you need to communicate with your boss, you need to communicate with the engineering teams, you need to communicate with your users, and you just need to synthesize all of this into something comprehensive. So it just became a thing where I was like, if I don't know how to communicate well, I will just be very bad at my job. But I think for a lot of people, their job necessarily doesn't require an debater or like world champion public speaker level communication necessarily. It's nice to have, but it's not a must have. And I think that's why I say the why is important, because sometimes if, let's say, you want to communicate because you see a very good public speaker on YouTube and you're like, I want to be that. That might be a little too daunting, right? So I think it's important to be real as to why you want to communicate, because that's going to shape what good communication is to you. And so the second part is good communication might just be your ability to be incredibly brief and clear. Good communication to some people might be that they're incredibly rhetorical and persuasive. Good communication for a lot of people might just be that they're a very good professional meeting manager, like the people who can conduct meetings very effectively. And I would say start with something very specific, because I think the more specific you are at where you want to start, the journey becomes short and doable. And I think it becomes less daunting, because communication is such a wide field. If you don't start with something, it becomes very problematic. So let's say hypothetically, let's say someone's listening and they're like, okay, I'm in my third or fourth year at uni. I want to be able to present something in front of my class, or I want to be that person that, if you're doing your master's and you have a thesis and you want to defend your thesis in front of a bunch of scholars, if that's your goal, then the way in which you approach communication changes. So my advice for someone like that would be that you just need to find like anything that allows you to present. This can be like, so after coming to Shanghai, I started doing stand-up comedy. So you could do that, right? You can go to Toastmasters, because there's like hundreds of Toastmasters organizations in Shanghai and Suzhou, Hangzhou. There's like so many, right? You can go there, but essentially none of it is theoretical. It is literally just practical. It's like going to the gym. So if you want to lose weight, you go to the gym. If you want to be better at a version of communication, you like realize what that is, and you basically try to find a source that allows you to do that repeatedly. So again, for presentation, Toastmasters, I think is sensational. Like, I was so surprised to see how many Toastmaster chapters are here in China. It's crazy. And for those of you who don't know what Toastmasters is, it's just an organization that helps professionals do public speaking. It's just it's like a gathering where people sit down and they just build the habit of talking for 2 minutes, for 5 minutes, for 10 minutes. The format varies. The other thing that I would say is, if you just want to be better at conversations, podcasts, it's such a blessing in disguise. Like, I wish I had more podcasts when I was in the 7th grade. I started actually listening to podcasts, I think, when I was sophomore year of university. But just being in an environment with good communicators makes you a better communicator. So if you just sit down and listen to people talk, and they're very good at talking. You just by proxy pick up everything from their tonal cadence to how they structure thought. And if you sit with them for long enough, you start mimicking some of their behavior, which eventually helps you, like it just jumpstarts your communication ability. And I think to structure it a little bit, I'm saying the first part is do the activity and find places to do the activity. Second is listen to a lot of podcasts or be around good communicators.
Communicators, yeah.
Yeah, if you have none of that, I think the last thing, and this is going to sound a little weird, but it actually works, is that lock yourself into the room and pretend like you're talking in front of people for as long as you can. I have done this, like I've wasted hours doing this. And the beauty of it is your imagination or your procrastination or your fear, like even if it's fear, it enables you to like act on your shortcoming. So if you lock yourself into a room and you're like, okay, what if I'm in a situation where I suddenly forget what my presentation was about? In that imaginary moment, in the comfort of your room, you will find ways to talk that no one can teach you. Like the best debate coach in the world can't teach you, we can't teach you, no one can teach you. And as unfun as it sounds, if you get used to it, like if you just play a video of a communicator and then imagine yourself to be that communicator, or you put yourself hypothetically in the place that you fear the most, and you keep on talking, over time it'll compound into you being incrementally better, which you will notice. Because I think, as individuals with shortcomings, we know when growth happens. Like I've been going to the gym nonstop for the last 6 months. And even though people necessarily can't tell a difference, I can tell a difference in the way in which I feel, in the way in which my body looks. So it's the same thing. If you keep on doing these things, it'll be noticeable. It'll compound. It'll be noticeable.
The results will be noticeable. Yeah. I like the way that you have really prepared this aspect, and you have made it as simple as it can be. Like that aspect of starting with the why, because we can say that all communication should be the same, because different settings require different approaches. And so when a person understands that why do I want to be a good communicator? It's because I want to do well my presentation you gave. Also, I just want to debate well. And so the why defines the incentives or the ways that you will approach this aspect. And I like the way that you also said about the simplest ways on how you can now improve this. Be in a setting or listen to more content so that you may improve. And then at the end, if it's not possible, I cannot count the times that I've stayed in front of my computer and just project my next presentation and just talk with myself and assume. What if they ask, okay, go on with your question, and okay, and I'll try to answer the question, and I cannot imagine how many times I've done that. And to my surprise is that the presentation, on the day of the presentation, actually, it just turns out to be like, I already did it. I already know what I'm doing. And so it gets simpler with time. And this interests me because you're building a platform that gamifies the communication experience, gamifies how young people or kids, or even mature people can try to learn how to improve their communication skills. And at the same time, you guys are noticing the progress. So you say right now at the end that the progress might not be publicly noticeable, but you yourself, you see that progress. And so I just wanted to know more about your platform, and I wanted to know how do you intend to make this process nice to someone who is worried, anxious, who doesn't know how to communicate, and they're trying to find a way out. I know one of the methods you mentioned is being in a setting like Toastmasters and all that. But now let's talk more about your platform, what you're trying to build, the product.
Right. So I think that's a great segue. So actually have a MVP of a product that we're internally testing. For MVP meaning a marginal viable product that we built with an engineering team. And I look at it in 3 stages.
Yeah.
So first is the learning part. And the learning part is very difficult because if you think about it, there's online learning.
Yeah.
It's been desensitized to kids because of parallel sources of entertainment that they have on the internet. That is to say, the content that they have on the internet is so hyper exciting. Like it's hyper exaggerated. It's so like dopamine inducing that when you bring them back into like a setting where it's a normal slow course, they automatically tune off. And even if they don't tune off, it doesn't stick in their mind because your content is trying to fight, I don't know, TikTok, and you will never win that battle, right?
Yeah.
So there, I don't want to basically go into the too much of like the details of it, but basically the way to think about it is how can we make either our content exciting or our content very low effort and easy to remember. Now, the sad part is it's very difficult to make debate or public speaking or communication exciting after a certain level. There's a cap because at the end of the day, you're talking about very basic things.
Yes.
So our approach was, once we did the research, because like we have so many kids that we work with, once we basically did some user discovery and focus groups with them, we realized is you actually have to just make it as least resistance and as easy as possible, and you need to make them interact with them frequently. And the best example of when this works, it really works, is Duolingo, right? Duolingo makes you do it 5 minutes a day in a very fun setting and has streaks involved, and people are just mad about it, right? So for kids, what we're doing is we're implementing a similar micro learning model where the idea is you shouldn't have to spend more than 5 minutes on our platform every day to get better. So it's like, and in those 5 minutes, we are having to segment how much of it is theoretical time where you're listening to a lecture, how much of it is you doing quizzes and games, and how much of it is you reflecting on the activity that you just did, right? Because that's the 3 step. You learn, you interact, and you test what you just learned, and then you reflect on what you just did. So if you do these 3 things accurately, it almost it's like a safe point in a game, that has the highest retention if you do all these 3 things. So what we've come up with is we have 60 to 90 second videos, and we plan to actually go shorter. You watch that, then you do a small quiz, and then we are creating debate games. So it's like games that are like, it's like a puzzle game where we give you an argument, but we don't give you all the logic and analysis in the argument, and you have to pick the right one and place it there, or you have to input the right one yourself. So it's like we're trying to make it as interactive as possible, so that, let's say, if you learn something boring as how to find evidence for your argument, let's say, the interaction compensates for the fact that the lecture was a little boring, right? And we want you to be able to do that while on a car ride back home, waiting for the metro. We want you to be able to do it literally like before going to bed, or just waiting for your McDonald's Happy Meal to come, right? We want there to be as little resistance as possible, where you just do it. So that's basically the learning model that we're building. Now, the second part is basically the assessment and tracking model. Now, the assessment and tracking model is more complicated because the assessment and tracking model, so it's actually made more for parents and schools than it is for the kid, because the kid just wants to have a good time and wants to feel the changes. But the parents and schools, they want hard data, because again, that's how society works. We want like 100% A, B, C's, and so on and so forth. So the the technically challenging part is, how do we build a system that tracks all the time? And this is where I had to sit with a lot of my engineers and basically explain to them the different variables, both exogenous and endogenous, that they have to track. And basically we had to filter it so that our information architecture isn't so complicated that there's like just hundreds of different like variables that we're tracking and we're computing numbers from it. So it's about it's about being thorough but being simple in the tracking process, which we have a proprietary way of doing it. And the second part, which I think is I would say an easier part, which is, so then how do we display it in a standardized way that is understandable by everyone, right? So for example, the people that do it the best are IELTS or TOEFL, right? They have a TOEFL score, that they have the IELTS score to test your English. So we're trying to find a similar one like that, but for communication, which the challenge is, how do we not make it too gimmicky? Because we don't want you to, give you an arbitrary score, call it a communication score, and give you a 9. Because, there's a lot of stuff that gives you productivity scores and sleep scores. Most of them are not backed by any actual research. So we don't want to do that. So we have 11 years of data of all the students that we've trained. We're trying to basically take that, and we're trying to talk to as many schools and parents as possible to see what the tracking, the computation, and the interface, the final output is like. That is the more technical side of it. But the reason why the technical side of it is quite important is, of course, you can feel changes yourself, but I think there is value when you don't see it in yourself. We show you that you're actually improving, because it's sometimes very difficult to believe that I'm actually getting better. So you need someone to tell you that, hey, even though you don't see the gains, it's there.
You're coming.
Yes. And I mean, you would know, like, because you do a lot of personal training and fitness stuff, right?
Yeah,
so you know that it's very hard to keep people motivated, that if you keep on doing something, it'll come. So I mean, I think you know this better than anyone. So yeah.
It takes a lot of energy to convince people that even though you don't see it outside, but it's working. Just trust on the process.
Right.
And I like it. I like the way that you explained about the platform, and I think it's interesting. And hopefully, when it launches, we can also get to promote it as well to our listeners. And it's good, and I congratulate you on that.
Yeah.
And just as we wrap up to the end almost, I wanted to pick your mind about, we're in the AI development age, and AI is making things interesting, somehow making other things scary. And to optimists, we see it as an opportunity for growth, for wealth, for all these aspects. And so I wanted to know, what's your personal thoughts or professional thoughts about how AI can, help in soft skills, communication, critical thinking, so that we not only demonize it, but we also help people to continuously see how we can leverage these new technologies.
Right. No, I think that's a great question. So I think the two things I'll say is that, one, the existence of AI makes soft skills infinitely more important. And this is not just an opinion that I have. If you look at labor market research done by McKinsey or Deloitte, for example, you'll see that the top 10 skills, almost 50% of it, or even more, are just soft skills.
I agree.
Yeah. So it's just factually the biggest thought leaders in the market predict that what's going to differentiate you is the way in which you communicate, is the way in which you manage relationships.
Yeah.
So I think first it's important to acknowledge that this is actually happening, and this is factual, and this is not just a theory. The second thing I would say is in terms of how it's affecting us right now is it's basically it's more labor assistive than labor substituting. That is to say, AI is helping us draft and do more work. And it's like, I think a lot of people are like, it's going to replace us. I mean, Of course, right? In the 1930s, when calculators became a thing, there were teachers outside schools protesting against tech calculators.
I
In the
agree.
90s, when we had Microsoft Excel, accountants lost their mind, right? That apparently it's going to change accounting standards for the worst. So, of
Yeah.
course, there's like that. But I think it's important to realize for the longest time, it's AI is not like the calculator or anything, or even if it is like the calculator, right? It's assistive. But it is not as substitutable as we think it is. So it's not going to just suddenly take away your need to write. Like everyone's like, oh, you never need to write emails anymore because ChatGPT can write your emails for you. I'm like, if you want to write emails that people read, actually, you probably have to write it still. ChatGPT can help you draft something at best. And the last thing that I'd say in terms of like how it's changing the way in which soft skills are functioning is that it's making it important to be more authentic in the way in which you communicate. Because when I think as time goes on, more and more people will be able to just proofread ChatGPT AI material. Now, this is debatable because some people say that obviously AI improves at an exponential scale. So obviously it's getting better at writing. It's becoming more personified. But the thing is, communication is just not about talking. It's just about knowing who it's coming from. So if there is a person that is talking incredibly intricately and you know this person is like very casual, you'll never believe it's coming out of their mouth. Right?
Yeah.
So I think what my take is that over time, people are going to be able to understand themselves without any software that this is AI or this is an AI written speech, this is an AI written email. Like case in point is that like if I tell you like if I ask you like what's 5,083 times 3,044 divided by 2, right? And if you suddenly give me an answer, I'm like, no, right? Like I know that's from a calculator, right? So it's the same thing that I think is going to happen with AI. So it's about being authentic and confident in the way in which you speak, because I'm not trying to sound like anyone other than myself. And I think it's important for people to figure that out as to like how do they talk and be okay with it. Like Elon Musk talks differently than Jeff Bezos, and he talks differently than Steve Jobs and like Bill Gates, and just throwing like names of famous people out there. And but I think all of them are okay. Like Elon Musk is not trying to sound like Bill Gates, and Bill Gates is not trying to sound like Steve Jobs. So it's like, or like the best communicators are not just trying to sound different. And I think you don't have to be Elon Musk to have your own authentic voice. And I think people need to understand that. Like even if you have a tinge of an accent, or if you have like if you speak slower or you speak fast, right? Like I was always told that my problem is I speak with my hands a little too much, right? But I'm okay with that. Like I'm okay with that. So I think as soon as you can, find a place where you can go and explore and find how you can be authentic. And being authentic is just about being comfortable. Like you don't have to go and meditate in a cave for 10 years and figure out who you are. You just have to be okay with the way in which you talk. And I think that will be my advice. In the AI age, authenticity is going to be the biggest thing. And the people are going to gravitate towards people that are most authentic and confident when they talk. And you should pursue that because that's the one thing that will never change. And we should always focus on the things that will never change as opposed to the things that will change every 2 years or every fiscal quarter even. I think that would be my take on how AI changes things in the
amazing, man. I love. I really thank you very much for extrapolating on that point and making it even not evil, and making it as as appropriately as it can be, like how we should use AI, how we can really use AI to our advantage to improve ourselves, to know ourselves. I was listening to one communication podcast last week, and they were talking actually about it's the Think Fast, Think Fast, Talk Smart by Matt Abrahams, who wrote also a book like that. And they were talking about how AI actually can be used to improve communication, and rather that it cannot hinder communication, but rather be used to improve communication. Like even before you ask AI to write for you something, you say, let's say you say, ask me maybe 5 questions so that you may get to understand how I want this topic to be. And so
Right.
the AI helps you curate your own personal
Mm.
voice according to what you really want. And I really thank you, man, for putting that out. And I think for the listener, you can try listen to this podcast. You can try to listen to the Think Fast, Talk
Yeah.
Smart podcast as well. Or you can even try to go through the weekend reports, such as the ones that
Yeah.
Serenus just mentioned, and he mentioned something from McKinsey, reports from McKinsey. I also read one report from the World Economic Forum. So I think there are a lot of resources where you can see what are the most, the future of communication skills. And it's important, I mean, for you to be able to communicate with your family and your loved ones. Thank you very much, man, for being on the podcast today. And to the listener, today we were on episode, I think it's 43. I lose count of my
Yeah.
episodes because
That's a very good sign. That's a very good sign. That means you're doing enough that you don't keep track of, what number this is.
every day when I'm trying to mention the podcast, I'm trying to question myself, which episode am I in again? And thank you, man, for coming to the podcast. Thank you for sharing such awesome insights. And sorry if I try to pick too much your mind about your product, but hopefully we can hear about it next time as well. If it's launched, you're just welcome here and to share with us how it works, all that. And yeah, this is the point where I can let you share with the listener how can they connect with you, how can they maybe learn more from you, and if you want to share about your product, your company, it's the good spot to do that.
Yeah.
So welcome.
Yeah, of course. So the company I work for is called LOZO, LOZO. So LOZO. So I mean, we have so many different ancillary products that we work on, but we mostly work with K through 12 kids. But if you are in university, we can help you too. So I mean, if you are interested in just anything related to communication, just go to Baidu and just search up LOZO. Will pop up. You might see me in the website. Just reach out. Like we're a small, like I think 40-50% person operation, or maybe even less. Like, and we love just interacting with people because we're a communications company. So it would be so it's kind of like our thing. But yeah, I mean, I'm not a huge on social media and stuff. Like I actually don't do social media at all. So just you can find me on LinkedIn. I'll have Emmanuel put my LinkedIn up there. But just happy to talk, man. That's what I do. When I'm not arguing with engineers, that's what I do. So more than happy. Yeah.
So yeah, you can go to Baidu, you can go to I think Google, so you can just try and type LOZO, LOZO.
Yeah.
And look it up. And if you need anything, they say they are a communication company there. So you just reach out and they'll be delighted to talk with you. And thank you very much for tuning into the podcast. Today we were with Sreyan Kanungo, and he shared a lot about soft skills, their importance in this AI era, in this new era. So I hope you found this useful, and don't forget to let me know if anything, just in the comments below or wherever you're listening, Also let me know on my social media at Ebo Daily, and I'll be ready to respond. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, man, for coming to the podcast today.
Thank you, Emmanuel. Appreciate it.
All right.